Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Here we discuss the most relevant stories twice a week, so you don't have to suffer through the news alone, and I don't have to suffer through the news alone. And of course, as per usual, please leave your questions, suggestions, and constructive criticism down below in the comments because I read all of it, and it helps me greatly to tailor next episodes to your liking. Today we're going to be talking about how a Ukrainian sniper set a world record. More chatter about peace talks in the EU coming from Slovakia, and of course, they're pressuring Zelensky to cede territory. And we're going to be talking about Russia because how can we not talk about it? Because for 2025, Russia set a goal to capture more Ukrainian territory. Let's go. Ukraine can assist Syria with Ukrainian grain, flour, and oil. We discussed this with officials today, stated Volodymyr Zelensky, and this is how we start our Ukraine section. This is actually very important because Syrians are incredibly upset at Russia, of course, for helping Assad hold them in a regime for so long. So Ukraine is swooping in and not only saying, hey, we're your friend and we're going to support you, but also giving Syria grain and helping them with their imports and their food imports and with the situation in the country. I think it's a fantastic move for Ukraine. Now, with a very interesting update, a Ukrainian sniper set a record with 2,069-meter shot. A special forces sniper from Ukraine's HUR, known as Lektor, eliminated an enemy soldier from an incredible distance of 2,069 meters using a .338 Lapua Magnum round. Despite severe cold and being on the same terrain level as the target, Lektor fired from a trench at a moving enemy in a landing. He achieved a direct hit with his first shot. Kirill Budanov, head of the HUR, praised the historic achievement, a masterful job that will go down in history. Hitting a moving target at such a distance demonstrates exceptional professionalism and focus, qualities our military intelligence snipers are renowned for. It's actually not the first record that a Ukrainian sniper has set in the past 2.5 years since the full-scale invasion. I mean, obviously, we have a lot of practice, but I think it's about the third or the fourth record that a sniper from Ukraine has set so far, which is quite cool. I mean, I can't imagine myself a couple of years ago talking about how cool it is to set sniping records, but here we are today. Ukraine began mass production of Peklo cruise missile. Peklo means hell, if you're wondering. Ukraine's domestically developed cruise missile, Peklo, has entered mass production with approximately 100 units manufactured in the past 3 months, EP reports. Production capacity is steadily increasing. While the exact cost of the missile remains undisclosed, it is reportedly less expensive than the domestic drone Lutey, which means fierce. Peklo has already been used in combat 5 times, including successful missions. It can reach speeds of up to 700 kilometers an hour and strike targets of up to 700 kilometers away. According to the developer, 70% of the missile's components are produced in Ukraine by state and private companies. And that is also a very, very good bit of news because Ukraine needs more of our own production in order to be able to sustain ourselves in case some trouble happens west-wide and in case our allies are slow, and we don't want to repeat the situation we had in 2023 where we were so stretched for ammunition and so stretched for supplies while everyone was promising things and not delivering them, because obviously we can't afford that. Also, today marks the day that, there was a first air alert in Kyiv for a very long time. In the morning, actually, it started when I was on my way to work and ended as I sat in the recording studio. And a friend of mine, her name is Audrey, and she works for United 24, was able to capture her reaction as an American seeing a Shahed drone in the center of Kyiv for the first time. So take a look at what she has to say.
So it's my first time since I've lived in Kyiv ever seeing a Shahed drone. And I was out walking with a shashlik, and you heard the air alarms go off, and then you heard all of flying to the sky, like bigger stuff, and then just this really eerie, like of a lawnmower, and yeah, it was quite nuts. And I look up at the sky, and in the sky, slowly, and it was big clouds over the museum park towards Maidan and places. Just some think they got it down from the sound of it because there was one big. But that was quite nuts. And people are just like, I'll show you the video next. People are just like washing their windows, kind of like walking hurriedly in the streets. But it's crazy how something like that has become like a literal Russian drone flying through downtown Kyiv.
And since we're talking about Americans and the West, this is how we arrive at our Western section. And we're starting, as per usual, as a tradition now, from Syria. Assad smuggles millions to Russia amid Syrian economic crisis. Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad smuggled at least 2 tons of euros and dollars from the Syrian central bank to Russia, reports the Financial Times. Between 2018 and 2019, the Assad regime sent planes loaded with cash to Moscow, despite Syria facing a severe foreign currency shortage. During this period, the country's reserves were almost zero, according to an informed source. But of course, they were also almost zero because they were being stolen by the Assad family. The total cash, equivalent to $250 million, was flown to Moscow's Vnukovo airport at 100 and 500 euro bills, weighing around 2 tons. From March 2018 to September 2019, there were 21 such flights, with the money later deposited into Russian banks. Additionally, the Assad family secretly purchased assets in Russia, including at least 19 luxury apartments in the elite Moscow city district worth over $40 million. Yeah, I mean, it's not uncanny that Russia houses dictators. I'm honestly surprised that Russia did not appropriate their money for the war with Ukraine, because it does seem like Russia loves appropriating foreign assets. But I guess not when these are dictator friends that are fleeing the situation you created for them that also you weren't able to enforce. Yanukovych, wink, wink, we already have that in history. Meanwhile, the EU adopts 15th sanctions package against Russia. The European Council has approved the 15th package of sanctions against Russia, targeting 54 individuals and 30 companies from Russia, China, and North Korea. The sanctions list includes Russian military personnel involved in the attack on Ahmedid Hospital, energy sector executives, individuals responsible for child deportations, and those engaged in propaganda or sanctions evasion. Additionally, restrictions were imposed on Russia's shadow fleet, which is used to transport oil. And this sanctions package, as far as I'm aware, was actually approved by all of the European countries, and that is a first because, hey, Hungary, looking at you. And I think there might be a reason for that. If you watched the episode of Burning Questions that came out this weekend, we talked to a Hungarian expert about Viktor Orban, his power, and how it might be affected by Russia's recent failures in Georgia, Romania, and Syria. And I think the man is shaking in his boots and trying to be nicer to the EU. Meanwhile, some more trouble in Eastern Europe. Slovak president suggests Ukraine will need to sacrifice territory to achieve peace. Slovak President Peter Pellegrini believes that Russia and Ukraine need to engage in negotiations, with Kyiv potentially making territorial concessions to achieve peace, Taraz news agency reported, citing Pellegrini in an STVR program. Pellegrini stated that Ukraine and Russia need to come to the negotiating table and that the situation should be viewed realistically. Well, realistically, Russia invaded Ukraine, and realistically appeasing a dictator never works if we're talking about realistically and reality, right? However, it must be said in a completely realistic way, and no one in Europe with normal thinking today thinks that peace can be established without territorial losses for Ukraine, commented Pellegrini. Ukraine, meanwhile, rejected Slovak president's remarks on territorial concessions. The Ukrainian foreign ministry responded firmly to the Slovak president's suggestions of the territorial concessions to Russia. Foreign ministry spokesman Georgi Tichy stated, "The last time Slovak land was given to the aggressor in the name of peace, it did not end well and did not bring peace to either the Slovaks or other people." Yeah. World War II, anyone? And I love Poland's response to this, and Poland is always on our side, and Poland is always on the right side on this, and they always say it better than anyone could. Poland urges pressure on Russia, not Ukraine, for peace talks. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski emphasized that the US and Europe should pressure Russia, not Ukraine, into future peace negotiations, as Ukraine is the victim of the aggression. At the same time, unofficial reports suggest that Ukraine's European allies are discussing the potential deployment of foreign troops in Ukraine. This measure, tied to a hypothetical ceasefire, would act as a safeguard against renewed Russian aggression. And it's honestly, I mean, you know my position on this. You know every sane person's position on this. Why do we consistently keep asking questions like, oh, Mr. Trump, what should Zelensky cede, if anything, to achieve peace? It's not about what should Ukraine cede. It's not about what should Ukraine sacrifice. It's not about what Ukraine should be without. It's about what Russia should do, because Russia is the aggressor. And we are living in this la-la land world where for some reason we constantly keep treating Ukraine like Ukraine is to blame for this. Meanwhile, we have to blame Russia, and we have to treat Russia like Russia needs to make concessions and Russia needs to make compromises, because Russia is the one that is wrongdoing. EU peacekeepers in Ukraine are premature as Russia rejects peace. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas stated that discussing a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine is premature because Russia shows no interest in peace. Peace is needed to deploy peacekeepers, and Moscow does not want that, Kallas said after a meeting of EU foreign ministers. Her remarks follow pressure from Donald Trump's team to accelerate efforts for a peaceful solution. However, Kallas pointed to recent comments by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, which confirmed the Kremlin's unchanged goals. Last week, French President Emmanuel Macron raised the topic of peacekeepers in Warsaw, but Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk dismissed the proposal. Meanwhile, some European capitals are exploring scenarios for potential EU military involvement if requested by the Trump administration. Well, interesting why Trump administration would request that. Also, Trump administration themselves said that, Trump thought it would be much easier to achieve peace here, and he's just now realizing that it's going to take over 24 hours and it wasn't as easy as he thought. And then some other Trump advisors came out and said that, he hasn't really given the resolution of the conflict much thought, which indicates that it's not really on his priority list. And to be honest, I'm willing to believe that Trump hasn't actually been thinking very deeply about this. He will when he needs to, but until then, he doesn't really know what it involves to end this war, and that's very evident from the things that he said before. But it's so up in the air, and we are still pressuring Ukraine, not Russia. And we have lessons from history with, the man with a mustache to kind of see what that does. But for some reason, we're not learning, and we're not remembering who that is half the time. Scholz reaffirmed support for Ukraine but ruled out long-range weapons. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz assured Ukraine of continued support while emphasizing the need to safeguard Germany's security and sovereignty. Ukraine can count on us. We will remain its biggest supporter in Europe, Scholz said. However, he ruled out providing Taurus missiles or other long-range weapons and reaffirmed that German soldiers will not participate in the war. Scholz acknowledged public concern about Russia's ongoing aggression as Germany approaches elections, but stressed the importance of continued support. If Germany abandons Ukraine, Europe's security will face serious long-term risks. We are defending Ukraine's sovereignty, and it will stand. We want the killings to finally stop. During a visit to Kyiv, Scholz assured President Zelensky that Germany will stay committed while carefully balancing its own security interests. Well, the German government has collapsed, and Scholz is no longer at the head of it. So while these sentiments and these statements are relevant to yesterday, they're likely not going to be relevant with whoever is in power next. I mean, they're going to be relevant in terms of what Germany's stance on Ukraine is, because most political forces in Germany support Ukraine and understand the threat of Russia, but the statement about Taurus missiles might not be as relevant if, for instance, Friedrich Merz becomes chancellor. So let's see what happens when a new government forms in Germany. EU is to launch a 10.6 billion euro IRIS-2 satellite network by 2030. The European Union has signed contracts to develop the IRIS-2 satellite network, a project designed to provide encrypted global internet connectivity for governments, militaries, and private users. Scheduled for completion by 2030, the network will consist of 290 satellites. The EU will invest 6 billion euro, with the remaining funding coming from the private companies and the European Space Agency. IRIS-2 aims to reduce Europe's reliance on private systems like Elon Musk's Starlink and strengthen the EU's defense and technological capabilities. Yeah, no one wants to depend on Elon Musk these days. In fact, even his customers for Tesla can't really depend on him because the cars that he makes and sells for ridiculous amounts of money are not very functional, not very well designed, and are just garbage for the amount of money that they cost. So yeah, I think every one of us in the world, especially here in Europe where we don't have to depend on the First Lady, Ilona Musk, is very happy to know that we're also not going to be depending on him for the internet, especially when it comes to the front lines. And since we're talking about the First Lady, Elon Musk, and we're talking about how quite detrimental he is to absolutely everyone in the world with his shenanigans and his love for Russia, this is how we're arriving at Russia. Russia's shadow fleet is a growing threat. Russia might deploy its shadow fleet of commercial ships for military transport, including moving tanks, fuel, and other equipment, warns Politico. This fleet, consisting of over 1,000 merchant vessels, poses a significant strategic logistic challenge. To counter this, the U.S. must act quickly to strengthen its maritime transport capabilities. And we have talked about Russia's shadow fleet quite a lot. There is actually an investigation on Ukrainska Pravda that I've linked in a previous episode. I'm going to link it again. It is done in Ukrainian, but it does have English subtitles, and it explains to you the dangers of Russia's shadow fleet and why it is so important to get rid of it. Russia sets 2025 goal to capture 4 Ukrainian regions. Russian Defense Minister Belousov announced that by 2025, the Russian army aims to fully occupy the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions, which Moscow illegally claimed in 2022. Moscow plans to achieve victory in Ukraine and fulfill the objectives outlined by Putin in June, Belousov stated, referencing Russia's demands for Ukraine to surrender these regions. According to Belousov, Russia has captured 4,500 square kilometers and 189 settlements since the start of the year. He claims Ukrainian forces now control less than 1% of the Luhansk region, 25 to 30% of Donetsk, and portions of Zaporizhia and Kherson. Well, first of all, Ukraine controls Zaporizhia, which is the state center city, the largest city in Zaporizhia region, and Ukraine also controls Kherson, which is the city center of Kherson region, and we took it back and freed the people in there, but sure, go off. Belousov also raised concerns about a potential war with NATO, saying the Russian Defense Ministry must prepare for all scenarios, including a possible military conflict with NATO in Europe within the next decade. I mean, yeah, you are sort of putting yourself at risk of having a conflict with NATO with how brazen your behavior worldwide is and how much you are absolutely disregarding international law. But sure, let's put it on NATO and let's continue spreading Russian propaganda because that's the only thing you know how to do. Speaking of, Russia has not occupied nearly as much territory since the start of the year. Russia lost a lot of territory since the beginning of their invasion, and they have, in fact, gained some territory in Ukraine in the past year, as in 2024. But while it's unpleasant, it's not that much territory. They're spending so much money and manpower to get cities that they raze to the ground, where no one lives anymore. They're plains, they're ruins, and they don't even get a lot of them. So really, this is just Russia being Russia and spitting lies everywhere they go. Russia plans to establish unmanned systems troops by 2025. Russia is set to create its own unmanned systems troops following Ukraine's lead in utilizing advanced drone warfare. Defense Minister Andrei Belousov announced that the new military branch could be operational as early as the third quarter of 2025. Good luck. Russia relocated troops from Damascus amid Syrian power shift. Russia has withdrawn at least 400 troops from the Damascus area, transferring them to the Khmeimim air base, reports the Financial Times. Kamal Ababidi, a political bureau member of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, or HTS, revealed that the withdrawal was coordinated with Syria's new authorities. These troops, previously stationed at the Syrian Army's 4th Division headquarters in Kutsaya and the Russian embassy in Damascus, were transported in a convoy of nearly 100 vehicles, including armored personnel carriers, fuel tankers, and mobile medical units. A video reviewed by Financial Times confirms the relocation. Lababidi stated that the soldiers were flown from the Khmeimim base to Russia. Ongoing negotiations at Damascus Four Seasons Hotel, now the rebels' de facto headquarters, reportedly aim to arrange the evacuation of remaining Russian troops from other areas of Syria. So to the troll that commented on one of the other news briefs saying that Russia is already in negotiations with the new government in order to keep their troops there and establish a good relationship, no, they're in the negotiation with the new government, with the rebel government, in order to get their troops the F out of Syria. So lovely when you live in an echo chamber of misinformation and love to believe it. Russian Chemical Forces general killed in Moscow explosion. In Moscow, Igor Kirillov, head of the Russian Armed Forces radiation, chemical, and biological protection troops and his assistant were killed in an explosion. Aw, sad. Preliminary reports indicate that an improvised explosive device was placed on an electric scooter near the entrance. The Ukrainian Security Service, SBU, confirmed the operation. A source from Ukraine's defense ministry stated, Kirillov was a war criminal and a completely legitimate target, as he ordered to use prohibited chemical weapons against Ukrainian forces. The SBU had previously charged Kirillov in absentia with ordering chemical attacks on Ukrainian troops. And there have been a lot of sabotage operations like that, where Ukraine has been eliminating generals that have given criminal orders and people and generals and, workers and just pawns instrumental to conducting further war against Ukraine by Russia. And it's been very nice to watch all of these people finally not be in service anymore. Anyways, that's all I have for you for today, fortunately or unfortunately. If you enjoyed this news digest, please don't forget to follow this channel, also give this video a like, and send it to a friend. I also highly implore you to comment your thoughts, questions, suggestions, or constructive criticism under this video, because I read all of it and it helps me greatly to tailor next episodes to you. And in the new year, we're going to be changing the format a little bit, so right now I really, really, really do need all of your thoughts, questions, and suggestions about what you find to be the most useful, what you like the most about these episodes, what you dislike, and what you would like to see in the new year. Thank you, and see you next time.